All right, so this is one of those videos that I've been kind of not this video specifically, but this is one of those topics that I've kind of been wanting to cover. And this game in particular, like Dragon Age: The Veilguard, kind of weighs on my head a little bit. I love Dragon Age, right? It is probably let me see. When RPGs are concerned, if I had to choose between Fallout, The Elder Scrolls, and Dragon Age, I would choose Dragon Age. Now, I'm talking about Dragon Age Origins specifically. And the reason that I'm talking about Dragon Age Origins, and I'll kind of go on a little bit of a rant here, but I loved that game. It was dark. You had a lot of choices. You could do a lot of things. If you didn't like someone, you could just kill them off. I think, if I remember right. And I just remember having so much fun with that game. It was so long ago, I barely remember. I just remember it was some of the most fun I ever had with any RPG. And I'm sure a good portion of that is nostalgia, but I also know that when I got to Dragon Age 2, I was very disappointed, right? And I mean, I was very, very disappointed. Not because the game was inherently bad, but because the game didn't feel like Dragon Age, in my mind at least, was supposed to feel like. And I discovered later that this game, this Dragon Age 2, was very rushed. They had like a year to make the whole game, and for what they had and like what they were working with, it wasn't really that bad. Dragon Age 2 was kind of like a last minute decision, but I didn't like it. I think that they took away a lot of the aesthetics that made Dragon Age such a good IP. They made it a lot brighter, a lot less dark and dreary, which made sense story wise because obviously the blight was gone, or I think the blight was gone, and it was based solely in one city, right? So I didn't like Dragon Age 2. I didn't play Dragon Age Inquisition. At least if I do, or if I did play Dragon Age Inquisition, I don't think it was memorable enough for me to really care about remembering. Even though I've heard good things about it. I've heard good and bad things about it, but for the most part, I've heard good things about it. I don't think I've heard a single good thing about Dragon Age the Veilguard. I saw Dragon Age the Veilguard. I saw the character models when it was getting its announcement trailer. I saw the cartoony vibe that it had, and instantly I hated every aspect of it. I don't care what the rest of the gameplay is. It could have been perfect in every other sense of the word. It did not feel like Dragon Age to me. So I'm gonna be honest. I'm a little bit biased in this, I guess, telling of the story, but I'll try not to be. But it looks like I was right.
Well, if I didn't fear for BioWare's life as a studio before, I sure as hell do now because three flops in a row, not a great track record, and EA is known for shutting down studios that don't show results. And BioWare was already on thin ice with past failures, and now seeing the results surrounding Dragon Age The Veilguard and how it did not meet sales expectations, like, I don't know if Mass Effect 5 will actually end up happening. Officially, there's nothing indicating that EA is going to shut down Bio or anything of the sort. It would seem as though Mass Effect 5 is still in development, but I don't know, just the future of BioWare it feels a lot less certain given recent development. So Dragon Age The Veilguard is the latest entry in the Dragon Age series. You can see right here that while reception, critically speaking, is positive leaning, the user score is not good looking on Metacritic. It is more positive on Steam, but it's not a whole lot better. Overall reviews are sitting at a 70%, mostly positive, though recent reviews have gone down to a mixed score of 60.
Yeah, people were people who liked the game and wanted to support it were review bombing it on one side. And I don't even think these people liked the game. I think that these people saw the people that didn't like the game as, I guess, grifters is what they call them. And they went in as like a counter to the weight that they were pushing and started giving it positive reviews to counteract the negative reviews that the horrible people that didn't like the game were giving it. So I think this is fake, the all reviews. I think the recent reviews is probably a lot more accurate.
64%. It's definitely not among the highest rated Bioware games. And what Bioware really needed with Dragon Age the Veilguard was not something that was good enough, but rather like a big home run. And they didn't quite hit that with Dragon Age the Veilguard. And you can see that reflected in the player numbers, where the all-time peak is at 89,418 players, which, you know, when it comes to how Bioware games have performed on Steam, it is definitely, in terms of overall record.
This is the first Bioware game that they've released on Steam. So every other game that, from my understanding, every other game that Bioware has put out, they put out on another platform for a period of time and then released on Steam at a later date for like a second release. And I could be wrong about some of the details, but I know that this is like accurate. I can actually look it up. Let me see. Yeah, so I think the one that they were comparing it with was Mass Effect 3, which was released in March 6, 2012, and released on Steam in November 7th of 2020. If I remember right, that's what it was.
Records pretty high, but when you compare that to other single-player releases, it just doesn't
it's really
indicate
bad. Especially for something that they spent like $400 million on.
that this game sold gangbusters. I mean, when you look at how Stalker 2 performed better than Dragon Age did, with Stalker, you know, arguably being a more niche IP, the fact that it managed to do an all-time peak concurrent player number on Steam of 121,335 players compared to Dragon Age's 89,418, that highlights that Dragon Age, especially given how well the previous entry sold, just didn't achieve the results that would have been ideal. And there were already early signs that Dragon Age the Veilguard was facing an uphill battle in terms of sales.
Dragon Age, I don't know. It's probably my own bias, but what Dragon Age came out in 2009. I like Dragon Age more than Skyrim. As an RPG, obviously they're two different games. One of them is an ARPG, and then the other one is a whatever you want to call Skyrim, first person.
With IGN having spoken to analyst Matt Piscatella from Circana, who said the following shortly after Dragon Age the Veilguard's launch. Just looking at the first days of sales and initial engagement levels via Circana's player engagement tracker, it's been a good but not great launch. And again, Bioware right now needs a great launch, not just a good launch. Dragon Age the Veilguard did not.
Yeah, I think they're saying good as corporate talk for like it wasn't what we wanted, but we're not going to concede that it wasn't because they put a lot of advertising. You could kind of tell when the game was coming out, they started advertising the crap out of this game. It was fucking everywhere.
Not reach launch week sales levels of either Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Dragon's Dogma 2, and it will be a bit of an uphill battle.
And just a note, they're doing the same thing with Assassin's Creed Shadows. So, at least from what I've seen, I don't know, it's plastered all over my GameStop.
To reach Inquisition's lifetime sales. But again, it's very early and a lot of the story is left to be told. And then another sign that Dragon Age the Veilguard wasn't selling as well as EA had hoped was the fact that it went on sale just a month after its release. During Black Friday, the Veilguard went as low as $54, over 20% off on Amazon and Walmart during Black Friday. This usually doesn't happen for a brand new AAA game that is selling very well. They usually will keep it at the peak price point to maximize revenue. So the fact that EA was willing to bring the price down for this time period suggested that they were seeking to boost sales.
$54 on sale is crazy.
Sales by offering a more compelling price point, but as we learned very recently, that wouldn't be enough for the game to meet what EA hoped Dragon Age the Veilguard would do in terms of sales numbers. This right here is a press release from January 22nd, 2025, where EA admitted that Dragon Age the Veilguard woefully missed the mark in terms of sales numbers. So here's what EA said in the following press release. EA's initial guidance for fiscal year 2025 anticipated mid-single-digit growth in live services net bookings. However, the company now projects a mid-single-digit decline, with global football accounting for the majority of the change. This press release doesn't just talk about Dragon Age the Veilguard's disappointing sales performance, but also that of what was formerly known as FIFA and now known as EAFC, with the latest entry not having performed as well as they'd like. The franchise experience.
What happened to FIFA? EA Sports bought it out and changed it to EAFC. I don't know, man. FIFA sounds way better.
A slowdown as early momentum in the first fiscal third quarter did not sustain through to the end. And then right here we have the bit where EA report sales numbers for Dragon Age the Veilguard and just how badly it missed the mark, stating, quote, separately, Dragon Age engaged approximately 1.5 million players during the quarter, down nearly 50% from the company's expectation.
And you know what's crazy is the company probably saw all the backlash that the game was getting before it came out. And that's when they started doing all the, like, I guess, crazy advertising and stuff. It was on Steam's front page for like 2 weeks at least. And that's probably where the 50% figure comes from. So with all that backlash, they probably still expected 3 million. I would say that they were probably expecting 5 to 10 million when they made the game.
So that means that EA had hoped that Dragon Age the Veilguard would sell at least 3 million units, and it only managed to push 1.5 million. Now look, 1.5 million is still a substantial number, but when we're talking about a AAA game on the scale of Dragon Age the Veilguard that was in development for nearly a decade, those are paltry numbers, with the expectation being 3 million units. The fact that they only achieved half that, I mean, those are abysmal results. That likely means that EA lost money on Dragon Age the Veilguard.
Yeah, they probably lost like a lot of money.
Veilguard, and it led to less than ideal looking results when it comes to financial guidance. EA's own CEO Andrew Wilson had the following to say on that front: Dragon Age and EA Sports FC 25 underperformed our net bookings expectations. Now, given how much value EA places on live services in particular, the fact that EA Sports FC 25 underperformed is actually the bigger deal, but Dragon Age the Veilguard being kind of this test on whether Bioware is able to kind of bring back the thunder they used to once have, and it having failed on that front with Dragon Age the Veilguard, just not having captured the interest of the gaming community on a level that Bioware and EA would have liked, that is just, it doesn't bode well for the future of BioWare. Especially when you look at how Dragon Age the Veilguard sales compared to past entries in the series. The previous Dragon Age entry, Dragon Age Inquisition, managed to sell a whopping
12 million. Dragon Age Origins came out in 2009, and I'm pretty sure BioWare was like relatively unknown. Okay, never mind. I still think they were relatively unknown in comparison. Because they started blowing up when Mass Effect was released, I think. (2007). So I mean, they had a little bit of success before that, but not like a whole lot. 3.2 million copies of DAO. 12 million of Dragon Age Inquisition.
12 million units.
Wow. And we're talking like in the lifetime of this game, it's probably going to sell maybe 50% of what it sold already. That's crazy.
It's in its lifetime. Dragon Age the Veilguard, over the course of 3 months, only managed to sell 1/6 of that. It didn't even sell as well as Dragon Age 2 did, which was previously considered to be the kind of black sheep of the series. Dragon Age Origins sold 3.
Yeah, I just said that. Dragon Age 2 sucked. It wasn't that bad. It just, when you compare it to Dragon Age Origins, it sucked.
3.2 million units, a little over twice.
I also hate the concept of voice acting RPG characters. Worst decision you can ever make.
That of what Dragon Age the Veilguard managed to accomplish. Now, who knows, maybe over the course of its entire lifespan, Dragon Age the Veilguard will somehow manage to sell more units, but I don't think that's entirely likely. There's just this lack of momentum surrounding Dragon Age the Veilguard. There's a lack of buzz, and I think that in large part has to do with Dragon Age the Veilguard just not quite feeling like Dragon Age. The kind of tone and atmosphere and aesthetic that it went for, to me, it almost feels like a Disney-fied or like a Marvel-fied version of Dragon Age. When I booted up Dragon Age Origins after having played a bit of Dragon Age the Veilguard, the difference was night and day. Dragon Age Origins, just from the opening cutscene, I felt that like dark fantasy grittiness and just how seriously it took itself.
Well, when you have a game, and this game has like a subreddit, and this subreddit bans anybody who posts anything negative about the game as soon as they post it. Maybe it's a sign that the game isn't really that good. I don't necessarily think that Dragon Age the Veilguard is like a really, really, really bad game. I think it's pretty bad. From everything that I know about the game, I don't think it's anywhere near what it should be. But just watching all of the political mess that it became, I don't think it's worth playing that game at all. And I'm very disappointed about it because I think I got really big back into Dragon Age a couple months ago. And I was really excited because I was like, oh, there's going to be like Dragon Age Dreadwolf coming out. It was like early last year. Dragon Age Dreadwolf is going to come out. I'm kind of interested because I just finished watching this 2-hour-long lore video about Dragon Age. And then this happens, and obviously my hopes and dreams are crushed, and now I have to go work at McDonald's for the rest of my life.
Whereas Dragon Age the Veilguard, it just feels like this sanitized, sterilized version of what I used to know Dragon Age to be, that just made Dragon Age the Veilguard nowhere near as gripping in its opening hours in the same way that Dragon Age Origins was. While it's not like the worst product ever made, it doesn't deliver to the target audience. And then on top of that, aspects like the RPG elements and the writing and the combat fall short compared to what previous entries accomplished. While Dragon Age the Veilguard is the most technically sound product that Bioware has released in a while, especially when you look back at how Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda launched, it still doesn't change the fact that ultimately The direction that they took Dragon Age into wasn't the right one, and the lack of interest surrounding this game and how poorly it sold compared to even some of the worst-selling entries in the past highlights that. And when you consider the trials and tribulations that Dragon Age the Veilguard went through, having been in development since 2015 due to numerous delays and overhauling, the project was rebooted a number of times. It was initially supposed to be a live service. That was what the mandate was before they decided to make it a single-player game, all combined with a high staff turnover and the amount
Hang on. It did start off as a live service game. What? Hold on, is this? I don't know if this is like reputable. Well, I mean, it's a probably not, but chasing live service and open world elements diluted BioWare's focus. Dragon Age, blah blah blah. So they were pushing live service. They also kept like back to its roots, back to its roots, back to its roots. This is a straight up lie.
of manpower, resources, money, and time poured into this game to only sell 1.5 million units, that is likely a huge net loss overall for EA. Something else that caught people's attention is the fact that Dragon Age the Veilguard's director, Corinne Bush, recently left BioWare. Now, some people speculated that this might be indication that EA is starting to dismantle BioWare, but according to Jeff Grubb, who reported on Corinne Bush's departure, he said that I don't think EA is closing BioWare Edmonton. I was told there's nothing solid about that part of the rumor. Then Eurogamer managed to get a hold of BioWare and EA and Corinne Bush, and here's what Corinne had to say about her departure. As for me, my departure was voluntary.
Sure it was.
As I have been presented with an opportunity I couldn't turn down. I don't want to say much right now, but you can count on it being in the CRPG space and upholding the traditions of great characters. So apparently her departure is no indication of BioWare's fate, but it certainly doesn't help boost confidence in BioWare.
Well, I think the director of the game that flopped departing right after the game flops is probably an indication that that person didn't necessarily leave on the right terms.
BioWare's future being stable and secure. Especially with Dragon Age the Veilguard marking BioWare's third flop in a row, I'm frankly shocked that EA has been so patient with BioWare. Prior to Dragon Age the Veilguard, we saw the launch of Anthem back in February 2019, and critically, it was not met favorably. It didn't take long for Anthem to lose development support. The game is still online, but it's not being updated anymore. There were plans for an Anthem next overhaul, but EA decided that it was not worth the risk and or investment, and so they decided to not run with that and shut down support for Anthem. While the game did manage to sell over 5 million copies, it doesn't change the fact that the expectation was that Anthem would be a long-term success, that it would bring recurrent revenue. And when you compare Anthem's numbers to other EA live services like Star Wars Battlefront, you can kind of gauge where EA sets their sales expectations for those kinds of games. And Anthem just didn't meet them. Then we have Mass Effect Andromeda, which also launched to not so great critical reception from both critics and users alike, especially because it was just such a technically messy launch, combined with it just not living up to the pedigree of Mass Effect when it comes to the writing in particular, and the story and the narrative and the characters. Sales numbers wise, I don't think EA has officially disclosed those numbers, but it is estimated that Mass Effect Andromeda sold roughly 3 million units. Not the worst sales figures, but also certainly not the best.
No,
it did
it's
not
not very
take
good.
Mass Effect to a whole new level as an IP in terms of brand recognition and goodwill.
I don't know. I think people have been up. Thanks, Sarah. I think people have been unhappy with Mass Effect for a while. I don't think this is really a new thing. So, I mean, I don't think anybody really didn't see this coming. I don't really know that much about Mass Effect Andromeda, but I remember seeing a lot of backlash for how like Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 turned out. I think Mass Effect 3 specifically.
Will and positivity surrounding it. And so I guess now the question remains, what does the future hold for BioWare and their upcoming game, Mass Effect 5, or whatever this new Mass Effect game ends up being called? Well, we did see Michael Gamble, project director slash executive producer at BioWare, who is leading the next Mass Effect game, post about how he loves Mass Effect just a few days ago and how every week is a good week at work for me, suggesting that Mass Effect 5's development is still alive and well. But that doesn't necessarily mean that serious discussions aren't happening behind the scenes about BioWare's fate on the part of executives who are looking at the overall picture and trying to see where they can reduce costs. And when you look at past instances of publishers having shut down entire studios without warning the developers, without showing any hints or signs that a shutdown was imminent, that layoffs were imminent. We can look back at situations where developers found out that they were laid off or fired or that their studio got shut down through the news cycle and through social media. They were informed that way before the company decided to inform their own employees. When you look at those situations, you really don't know what can happen. Now, I, for one, hope that BioWare at the very least gets to output Mass Effect 5. I do want to see that come out, and I do want that to be successful, and hopefully that can mark a comeback for BioWare. But we've been hoping for a comeback for BioWare for so many years now, for so many new entries, that it's a hope that's becoming more and more difficult. BioWare's reputation is just not what it used to be when it comes to producing those financial results for.
Yeah, I don't know why you expect it to be like it used to be. It's not the same people. It's yeah.
EA, it's not done so time and again. Dragon Age the Veilguard sales woefully underwhelmed, only selling half of what EA wanted this game to sell. I'm not saying that EA won't give BioWare the chance to ship Mass Effect 5, but I also do think that if EA, 1 year before Mass Effect 5 ships, finds itself in a situation where they're in a financially precarious situation because of a string of flops that causes them to have a bad year and they need to start making cuts, it would not shock me if BioWare was somewhere near the top of the list, given that the studio just hasn't produced the results that EA would want them to produce, and they haven't produced the kinds of results that would light goodwill surrounding BioWare on fire again, that would light the gaming community's hype for Bio releases. So only time will tell. This is all speculative on my end, but I cannot imagine that BioWare is currently in the best standing with EA executives. It's hard not to be pessimistic about BioWare's future and to have this realization that they're really not the studio that they once used to be, and that a lot of the talent that made BioWare back in the golden days, they're gone off doing their own stuff, and talent ultimately is what makes a team, and BioWare just feels very discombobulated on that front. It's just hard not to see it that way when you look at BioWare's history of lukewarm to disastrous launches over the past few releases over the last many years. Or at the very least, that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on BioWare as a studio, what you think fate holds for them. Do you think that they'll get to launch Mass Effect 5, and what do they need to do with Mass Effect 5 for you to kind of have that faith for BioWare again, for them to make that comeback? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young
Yeah. Oh, he said young out. My bad. I like this guy. So it's a philosophical ship. It's called the Ship of Theseus, I think. And it's a ship that sails, and it goes out with a new crew. It's a new ship, just got its name. It goes for like a sailing journey, and it comes back, and it needs some repairs. And you might change like a plank or two, and then it keeps doing that, and then eventually it gets a new crew, and then at some point there comes a point where not a single plank on that ship was from the original vessel, right? it's a thought experiment designed to say, is this the same ship? And I think that in this case, it's not. I don't think that BioWare currently is the same BioWare that made Mass Effect and Dragon Age Origin at all. I'd be hard pressed to say that there's anybody there from that era.